and we're going to talk about rates because we always freaking talk about rates, but it's relevant to the housing market. With the last increase, I was curious what was going to happen, if anything, to fixed rates. And for 3 months now, the 5-year fix has remained pretty constant between 4.5% and 5%, depending on lender and whatnot.
Yep.
And what's interesting is in the last 3 months, obviously, the prime rate, the overnight rate, has gone up by 175 points, but the 5-year fix has not moved. And this underscores the fact, and I mention this to people all the time, that the 5-year fix is related to the bond yield, not related to the bank rate. It's different. Check out our previous episodes as to why, but it's good to see the fixed rate staying pretty steady, even though variable is raising up. But it means now also that most people's variables, which would be prime minus a half or prime minus a point, are right now also sitting between 4.5 and 5. So right now, variable rates are effectively on par with the best 5-year fixed rates that you can get right now. And the Bank of Canada is going to raise probably by another 75 points anyway between now and the end of the year. So we are going to enter that period where the variable rate will be above the fixed rate for the first time in, jeepers, I can't even think of how long, but for a very, very long time. And we've talked a lot about this, and I've been hardcore in the variable camp. I don't totally feel like I'm eating crow at this point, but I know you probably have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I was more of a fixed rate person. It depends on your situation. When we talked about it before, it all boiled back to being dependent on your situation. But I was a bit of a fixed rate person at that point in time because I felt that there was a couple hundred points to come, and there have been a couple hundred points that have come since then, and there's more to come. And so my feeling was it was about 200 basis points in the difference. But if you took that, I think you would be in a lower position, and it would give you a fixed number that you know that you're paying. I think in 12 to probably more than that, 16 months from now, your variable rate will be lower than that fixed rate you would have taken. But again, to give some,
I agree.
To give some consistency,
it's the next 12 months or so that it's going to be a question mark as to which is higher.
Exactly. But I think to give some consistency and some understanding of where your rate's going to be, it's nice to have done a fixed rate. And I think more on the commercial side because commercial rates are a fair bit higher. Like I just got a residential variable quoted this morning and it's 5%, which is not that bad. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, I got a residential or a commercial variable quoted about a month ago and it was like 7 point something %. Like it was insane. Yeah. And that's in the banks don't even like on commercial side, they didn't want to lend on a variable. It was cheaper to take a 2-year term than it was to go with a variable. And so that's where my push for the fixed rate concept is they were a fair bit cheaper on the commercial side. So at this point now, I would say, yeah, definitely take a variable unless you really are wanting some stability because always in the back of my head looming, I'm like, is there a chance that they're still going to keep running it up? Because like we've talked about, we have some concern and maybe not full faith in the idea of their inflationary numbers. I know the hot dog's going to bring inflation rate back down to where it needs to be, but it's
holding us down.
There's some concern that there's some manipulation going on to the inflation numbers that might not reflect truly what's taking place. And like we're going to talk about in a little bit, interest rates have an impact on different things over a period of time, and we haven't seen the impact of the interest rates across the board yet. We are just starting to see almost the start of what they're going to do. And I think next year is going to be a telltale for that.
Yeah, so. I mean, a couple things that are worth noting. The one challenge with opting into a 5-year fixed rate is that your break penalties are going to be higher, right? And as investors, it is nice to keep the flexibility of a variable rate. And then so the next question becomes, like, well, I'll just do a 1-year or a 3-year, something like that. But the 1 and 3 years, I think, are around 5.3 to 5.5. So again, now you've got that same cushion built in where it's like, okay, well then still the variable's a little bit better and I have that flexibility. Obviously, if there was a period maybe 6 months ago where you could have locked in a 2-year fixed rate, that could have been a pretty lucrative thing. But there's also the problem of qualifying. Like, remember, when you are qualifying, you either have to take your rate plus 2% or 5.25, whichever's higher, and like that's what you have to qualify at. Some people just can't qualify for the fixed rates, but that's gonna. They're both getting hard to qualify. And I saw a study. I don't know if you see it there. Where it's something like almost half of buyers in Canada right now have decided to press pause on their search due to interest rates. Did you see
Yeah.
that?
It's 44% of Canadian buyers are pressing pause due to higher interest rates, and 34% are saying that they're not going to press pause. Again, it's
This
like
speaks
this
to
is
the
a,
public sentiment thing.
it,
that you're
it
talking about,
does.
yeah.
The one thing I think that is like I don't think it's due to higher interest rates. I think it's a combination of things. But I think people are wise to the idea that it's, well, I guess it's because of higher interest rates, but it's all the things to come. Like I think everyone's unsure of what's to come. If you told them that the rate's going to be 7% now for the next year, and then, or it's 5% on residential side for the next year, and then it's going to start going back down, and they had confidence in that, I think they'd still be open to buying. But I think
Well-
everyone's pausing because they don't know. Like, is it gonna stay where it is, or are we just gonna keep running up, or is the economy really gonna start to take a beat down? Because I think logically, if you take any of those buyers and you sit them down, and you say, look, we've talked about it here before. You're gonna get that house for a 15% discount. You're gonna pay a higher rate for the next 24 months.
Yeah, that was a great breakdown. Yeah.
And then that extra rate cost of 24 months is gonna be $12,000 or $25,000, but you're saving $150 on your house purchase. And so in 3 years from now, you'll actually be in for $150,000 cheaper than if you had signed a 1.83% mortgage 8 months ago
price,
at an inflated price.
Yeah.
And so I think they'd all buy at that same point if they can still qualify. But I think there's a bigger, and I think a lot of people kind of get that. But I think there's a lot of like concern about, is there something worse to come?
It's also kind of funny because I still think about it like, man, 4.5% on a 5-year fixed isn't too bad.
That's still so chill.
And so, and it's been like that for 3 months. So people keep hammering their head on the overnight rate, the overnight rate, the overnight rate. Well, it's gotten to the point now where if you're getting new money right now, the difference between variable and fixed in this moment is moot. It's about the same. So you will make whatever decision you're more comfortable based on your risk sensitivity and your budget ability to absorb, say, another 150 points of variable increase. But the interest rate that you can get on a 5-year fix, if you're going that direction, is the exact same as it was 3 months ago, and you would then be holding that for the next 5 years. So you do have a pretty comfortable level of predictability. And also, to your point, in the last episode, you're like, oh my gosh, people are going to all feel this stress and they're going to have to sell off. Well, they can opt into a fixed rate mortgage right now at around 4.5%, maybe 5%. So what is this? Like, I don't know that that's going to squeeze as many people as you think it is when you were like, oh, it could come down 25% because people are going to be squeezed.
I don't think that people are going to have to sell off because simply of an interest rate. I think,
right? You think
because of a mortgage rate.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's the fact that they own a house, they own 2 cars,
right.
They don't simply eat Costco hot dogs. They have a lot of other expenses that they're going to get beat up on, and we all know, like, the last 2 years, people have been frivolous and have bought a bunch of shit. I'm guilty of that they should not have bought, because it felt like things were just going better because things just kept getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to borrow against. And so there's lots of ATVs and boats, secondary homes, trips that have been booked, all these things that are like eating away at this money. And during that time, it kind of worked because money was just flowing out. On top of it being cheap, there was free money from the government going out all over the place.
Yeah.
And so people had this ability to do that. Now they cut off the free money. They made the money that's out there way more expensive. And so, the mortgage rate's not going to necessarily kill them, but like car rates are ridiculous. Like vehicle financing is insane. And like, so then you start kind of building up your line of credit, home line, like, or not even home line of credit, the unsecured lines of credit that most people have one. They're like maybe $5,000 to $20,000.
Yeah, that's what actually kills people, not their mortgage payment. Yeah,
totally. Those are now like 9%, like 9, 10, 11, 12%, because they're unsecured. Any unsecured stuff that you have, anyone who had investments in the market that they might have been relying on, the market took a big beating, so they drew, and so they might have had to draw on that. And now they're like, okay, it was 100, now it's down to 70. Plus, I have to draw on it. So now I'm selling at the bottom, getting nuked. So I think like that combination of everything going on, some people might be like, you know what, I can still get out of my house a little bit ahead right now. I'm going to make that sale. Or if they're in a rental position and they have all these other things financed, like their rental rates, if they moved anytime recently, their rental rate was like, oh, I was paying $1,200. For that same space, I'm paying $1,750 now.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.